Most men are chasing the wrong thing. They want to be liked, they want attention, applause, approval. But respect is something different. Respect is not granted to the loud or the charming or the entertaining. It is given reluctantly to the man who does not need it. A man who walks into the room without asking for attention but gets it anyway. A man who doesn't try to impress you because he's already impressed himself. In this world, people will follow charisma, but they remember character. And character is forged in silence, through discipline, through restraint, through the choices you make when no one is watching. The truth is, the most respected men are rarely the most visible. They're the ones with quiet power. Men who do not perform but remain grounded in their principles no matter the cost. They are not guided by the emotions of the crowd, but by an internal compass they do not betray. And if you want to become one of them, if you want to command respect without begging for it, you must be willing to lose popularity, comfort, and sometimes even connection. Because respect isn't earned through what you say. It's built through what you endure, what you walk away from, and what you never compromise on. A Stoic understands this. He knows that power isn't in how many people follow him, it's in how few people can move him. And that kind of power, real power, only comes when you no longer need the world to understand you, or like you, or agree with you. You just need to be able to look in the mirror and respect the man staring back. This is the path, and if you're ready to walk it, we begin now. Most people don't actually want to be respected, they want to be liked, admired, included. They confuse surface-level validation with deep regard. But the truth is, respect is never built on charm, and it isn't earned by playing the crowd. It's forged slowly through consistency, tested in solitude, and confirmed when no one is watching. Respect begins where performance ends. You can entertain people and they'll forget you by morning, but if you hold your values in the face of judgment, you leave a permanent impression, even on those who never liked you. A man chasing applause is seen as weak because his identity depends on how others respond to him. But the man who acts the same, whether he's being watched or ignored, carries an aura that cannot be faked. You can feel when someone lives by internal code. You can feel when they're not seeking approval, but alignment. And that feeling makes you look again. Because in a world starving for realness, the person who doesn't flinch under pressure, who doesn't bend to please, and who doesn't dilute himself to be accepted, becomes magnetic. Not through force, not through noise, but because he's anchored. And deep down, people are desperate to be around someone who cannot be moved by the winds that throw them around. The illusion is that respect can be taken, but the truth is, it can only be offered, and only to those who have proven over time that their principles are stronger than their desire to be liked. Respect comes to those who stop chasing the world and start becoming someone the world must adjust to. You cannot command the respect of others if you are a slave to yourself. The man who is ruled by impulse, who speaks before thinking, who reacts before reflecting, will never be taken seriously, no matter how loud he gets. True respect starts with inner order. The quiet dominance of your emotions, your thoughts, your appetites. A man who has mastered self-command does not need to announce it. People can feel it in his pauses, in his patience, in the way he holds his gaze without blinking. Most people are driven by their environment, pulled in every direction by emotion, validation, and fear. But the Stoic stands still. Not because he's cold or detached, but because he has trained his nervous system not to flinch in the face of chaos. This self-command is rare, and because it's rare, it's respected. You can't fake it. You can't shortcut it. You have to earn it through repetition, reflection, and restraint. The man who can deny himself short-term pleasure, who can hold his tongue in moments of provocation, who can choose discipline over indulgence when no one is watching, that man walks differently. He doesn't chase approval because he already approves of who he is. He doesn't fear judgment because he's already judged himself and passed. When you master self-command, people stop questioning you. They begin adjusting to you. Because most people live with internal noise, and when they meet someone who doesn't, they instinctively know this man is not like the rest. He doesn't move for attention. He doesn't perform for praise. He moves when it's time, and only then. And that, more than anything else, is the beginning of real, lasting respect. A man without boundaries is a man without shape, and a man without shape will never be respected. Boundaries are not walls, they are definitions. They tell the world who you are, what you value, and what you will not tolerate. When you set a boundary and enforce it, even when it costs you comfort or connection, you send a signal. I do not fear losing people more than I fear losing myself. And that is where respect begins to form. Not when you please others, but when you show you won't betray your code for them. Most people will test your limits not out of malice, but out of instinct. They want to know where you stand. They want to know if your words mean anything or if you can push you and you'll fold. The Stoic never threatens, he simply acts. He does not beg people to stay, nor does he chase those who violate his peace. He withdraws calmly, without performance, and lets the absence teach what the presence once tolerated. This is the power of quiet boundaries. You don't have to raise your voice. You just stop explaining, stop arguing, stop showing up for people who treat your time, energy, or character like they're negotiable. And over time, people either rise to meet your standard or fall away. Either way, you win. Because when your boundaries are clear, your value becomes clear. And when your value is clear, the world has no choice but to adjust. In a world obsessed with constant noise, the man who knows when to stay silent becomes dangerous. Not because he is passive, but because he is controlled. He doesn't reveal his thoughts to seek validation, and he doesn't react to every provocation like a dog on a leash. His silence isn't emptiness, it's calculation. It's the stillness of someone who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. People confuse loudness with strength because they've never encountered real power, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. But when you meet a man who listens more than he speaks, who pauses before responding, who doesn't react just because his ego gets bruised, you start to realize that silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. In fact, most people speak to fill the space where their self-control should be. They argue to escape insecurity. They talk just to feel in control. But the Stoic knows that silence can do what shouting never could. It creates space, tension, and reflection. It lets people hear themselves. It lets them sit in their own discomfort without being rescued. And in that space, respect is born. Not because you asserted dominance, but because you didn't need to. You were still. You observed. You made them wonder what you're thinking, not because you're playing games, but because you don't owe your thoughts to everyone who demands them. The man who wields silence strategically is a man who can't be baited, who doesn't over-explain, who lets his life speak louder than his lips. And in a world full of noise, the silent one becomes the mystery everyone respects and the mirror they can't look away from. People don't respect what you do once. They respect what you do every time. In the beginning, they watch you out of curiosity. But over time, they begin to believe in you because you are consistent in a world full of contradiction. Consistency isn't just about discipline. It's about identity. It's about showing up in alignment with your values, whether you feel like it or not. The gym doesn't build your body. Showing up when it's cold, when you're tired, when no one is watching, does. The same is true for your character. If you only live by principle when it's convenient, you don't have principles, you have preferences. But the man who honors his word, whether it's praised or punished, builds something greater than a reputation. He builds a myth. People start telling stories about him. They say he always shows up early, always follows through, always keeps calm under pressure. And the more they speak, the more his legend spreads. Not because he talks about who he is, but because he proves it in silence, over and over. Most people want big moments to define them, but it's the small, repeated choices, waking up early, saying no to the wrong crowd, staying loyal when no one's checking, that etch respect into the minds of others. Consistency is rare, and rare things create value. When your actions match your words again and again, people begin to believe in you more than they believe in themselves. That's how respect becomes cemented. It's not earned in a day. It's carved slowly through every decision you make when nobody is clapping, and every time you choose the hard path when the easy one is wide open. Over time, your consistency becomes a legend, and your legend becomes your power. The man who cannot control his emotions will always be controlled by others. If your peace can be stolen with a comment, if your anger can be provoked by a look, then your soul is not your own. It's at the mercy of anyone who knows which button to push. Respect doesn't come to the one who reacts, but to the one who remains still while others unravel. Emotional control is not repression, it's refinement. It's not that you don't feel the storm, it's that you don't let the storm drive the ship. Most people live at the mercy of their feelings, and because of that, they're inconsistent, impulsive, and easily manipulated. But the Stoic man turns inward, not to escape, but to master. He studies the patterns of his mind. He feels his anger rise, but doesn't let it speak for him. He feels pain, but doesn't beg for relief. He lets discomfort sharpen him, not break him. And because of that, he becomes unshakable. Others begin to notice. In conflict, he remains composed. In heartbreak, he stands tall. In insult, he doesn't flinch. People start testing him, and when he doesn't crack, they realize this man is built different. Not because he's emotionless, but because he's anchored. And there's nothing more respected than a man who carries fire inside, but doesn't burn others with it. A man who can cry in private, but still shows up in strength. A man who's been through hell, but doesn't use it as an excuse to inflict chaos. That is real power. Not loud, not dramatic, but deeply rooted. And when the world sees that you won't be moved by praise or blame, it begins to move around you with quiet reverence, because people fear what they cannot shake, and they respect what they cannot control. Nothing commands more respect than the man who can walk away, not as a performance, not as a tactic, but as a principle. The moment people sense that you need them more than they need you, the dynamic shifts. Your value becomes negotiable. But when you show, not say, that your peace, your purpose, and your self-respect are non-negotiable, the world takes notice. The ability to walk away isn't about arrogance or ego, it's about freedom, and freedom is magnetic. When you no longer tolerate mixed signals, disrespect, half-effort, or emotional games, and you cut ties with quiet certainty, you show the world you are not desperate to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. Most people threaten to leave, hoping to be chased.
The Stoic simply exits and lets silence speak what words never could. He doesn't beg for closure, he becomes it. He doesn't argue to be understood, he removes himself and becomes a mystery that lingers. And in that absence, people begin to confront what your presence used to protect them from: their own guilt, their own inconsistencies, their own failure to meet your standard. Walking away without warning is not about punishing others, it's about honoring yourself. It's about knowing when something is no longer worthy of your energy and having the discipline to disappear with dignity. The world respects the man who does not fight to stay where he isn't valued. And often, the moment you walk away for real, they come running. Not because they changed, but because your absence exposed what they could no longer manipulate. But by then, it's not about whether they come back, it's about whether you still care. Because the man who learns how to walk away without looking back becomes the man no one ever forgets. In the end, being respected isn't about being feared or admired. It's about being aligned. You don't chase respect by chasing people. You earn it by becoming someone even you would look up to in silence. When your actions match your values, when your boundaries are non-negotiable, when your presence calms storms instead of creating them, people feel that, not just in what you say, but in who you are. And the truth is, most people aren't ready to meet a man like that. A man who doesn't flinch when left, who doesn't explain himself just to be understood, who doesn't need the room to clap in order to stand tall. A man who can love without attachment, lead without shouting, lose without folding. That kind of man is rare. And because he's rare, the world either tries to humble him or follows him. But the Stoic man doesn't need followers. He just needs truth. He just needs alignment. And when he walks alone. Not because he is unloved, but because he refuses to betray his path for temporary comfort. That's where real respect comes from. Not from shouting louder, not from bending others to your will, but from bending your will to something higher, your code, your discipline, your quiet fire. Because in the long run, power fades, fame dies, charm wears off. But character echoes. So live in a way where your absence is noticed more than your presence is praised. Become the man who can walk away, who can stand alone, and who never has to raise his voice to be heard. That is how you are respected, not just by others, but by the only person who matters when it's all said and done: yourself.
If this message stirred something in you, if it reminded you of who you are and what you're capable of, then carry it with you, not just in your mind, but in your walk, your tone, your silence. Respect isn't given. It's carved from the discipline to remain grounded in a world that wants to pull you in every direction. So let this video be more than motivation. Let it be a mirror. Look at yourself now and ask, am I becoming someone I would admire? If the answer is no, change it. If the answer is yes, sharpen it. And if you're walking alone right now, understand this: solitude is where real respect is forged. Not from the world, but from the man you face in the mirror every day. If this resonated, subscribe, not just for more videos, but to stay aligned with the energy that's pulling you forward. Because around here, we don't chase approval, we walk with purpose, and that alone demands respect.